Hey, Reedy, how are you?
I'm doing good. Um, I'm on my phone. I'm not on my thing.
That's fine.
Okay, I didn't know if you needed to see anything or not.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about responsibly avoiding responsibility and the use of um, yes, no, no maybes as part of the HVAC 2.0 free quote process. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. Um, Free quote process is about helping people develop their ideal HVAC replacement specification, including helping them arrive at a budget, and not giving a quote until they're ready to make a decision. And before you lead into your story, I want to mention something that um, Ronnie told me about how he's been using it. Um, and it's really been helping him a lot because people are agreeing that the free quote process is really helping them have a clearer understanding of their HVAC decisions, um, some of the misconceptions that most people have about making their HVAC replacement decision, and that they're agreeing that given the help the HVAC 2.0 process provides, there is value to them in having an HVAC 2.0 contractor come back and review all of the quotes that they're getting. And the homeowners, are told that they're welcome if they're more comfortable hiding the pricing. They're welcome to hide the price, but that you don't want to give a hard bid until they're ready to make a decision because then you will bid against the specification that the other guys have provided. Um, and therefore, they'll have an apples to apples bid from the person that helped them build their ideal specification, which was you.
Hmm.
Uh, and then you don't get into the situation where they're actually using your bid to work other people for a competing bid. Because if they're working your quote, chances are you're not going to get the sale. Um, so, and you recently had an experience that ties nicely into that. You don't end up being a free low quote forcer.
Right, right. So I went over to a lady. We had done a large commercial job for her. I wasn't a part of it other than to say, to answer some technical questions about how the unit worked. That was my only involvement. They called, we went out, did the free quote. And as part of us, doing it, I did the likely load range. We did the duct static. Her and her husband both watched the videos. Um, Prior to doing any of that stuff, they had watched those videos doing the duct static and all that. We got into it. I did the duct static. The duct static was high. It was easy to pinpoint why. And we talked about that pretty in depth. They don't know anything about HVAC. They weren't satisfied with what they had. They wanted to go a little bit better, but not full bore. They told me they had a sort of a low budget. They wouldn't tell me what it was, but they told me they had sort of a low budget. So I said, okay, great. You know, we
Were you able to
we
bracket them with the tables?
I because they wanted the gamut, the full, from worst to best. I went ahead and did that anyways,
Okay.
knowing that they're kind of not going to want to get there, and that they were going to be, if anything, they were going to be more towards the middle of the road, maybe a crossover at best. And
Okay.
so we talked about how, the six functions. After they watched the video, we talked about that. We talked about which
What were
ones.
some of their problems? What
Their
was
main problem is that they had a room in the back. It's sort of a sunroom that was converted from a porch to living space.
oh,
That was a little cooler, and so what they ended up doing was they had some supplies and returns out there, and they ended up putting a mini split out there, which
okay.
was great. They loved the mini split, worked out fine, serves their needs perfectly. Well, they still had the other air out there, and that really pushed towards that, you know, let's reduce the size of the system because you didn't need that to begin with, and you sure don't need it now. And so, we talked about they had a 3 ton. We talked about 2 tons and 3 tons. The likely load range came up to like 17,000 BTUs or something along those lines. Um, so a 2 ton, two stage, crossover would have been really good for them versus a single stage, ton and a half or 2 ton. Asked him about budget again. I gave him the ranges. We went over the report right then and there. I asked him, what are you really interested in out of all of these? Now that we've seen the videos, we know that you've got some issues. We know what they are with your static, and we know what to do about them. What are you thinking about is more suited for you? And it was at that point that we started really looking at these smiley faces, frowny faces, um, and then the numbers. And they said, well, we're getting 5 quotes, and you're the first one. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm going to give you a range. Is that okay? Yeah, that's great. And I said, the reason why I asked that is because, you know, we kind of know that people, they cut corners sometimes, and sometimes they do that for the reason of they want to get the job. And I said, we're okay cutting corners as long as you are. We usually don't, but if that's what you want, then that's what we'll do. She said, okay, fair enough. I said, great. I said, now you've got the ranges. I said, what would you think that it would be too much for me to get the last opportunity to give a real bid? And she said, no, that's absolutely fine. And so I said, okay, left. There we go. And when it came down to it, she called me back a few days later, sent me an email, and what the email said was, these ranges are outside of our budget. You do not have to come back. I really do appreciate the time and energy, but we found someone who, even though it's not the same sort of equipment we wanted, we realized our budget was not what it should be. And so we're going to go with them. They're thousands of dollars less than you.
So you didn't
And
even have to do a quote because they knew and you knew that you wouldn't be competitive with chucking a truck
right, right.
and the low quality install and um
Yeah, and they know what they've got to look forward to. They know that they're not as happy as they'd like to be, but they also know, and they were upfront and honest, which is really nice because they were upfront and honest, saying,
very
you know,
refreshing. I mean
yeah,
it's nice to lose if you lose a job, it's nice to understand why.
yeah,
And it's
and
nice
I
that somebody gives you the respect to be straight up with you.
yeah, and I told her when we were sitting there at the table and talking about the last opportunity to bid, I told her, I said, I said, this is a free quote as it stands. And I said, I'm appreciative that you're going to give me the last opportunity to bid because I view that as payment. And that's what you and I talked about.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
view that
It's
as
part of how I
payment.
get compensated. I get if I lose the job,
Yeah.
I'd like to get compensated, and the way I get compensated when I lose the job is understanding why.
Yeah, yeah. And so I told her that, and I really truly think that me saying that phrase was the thing that made her send me that email, because she didn't want she recognized the value of what we do, even though she didn't go with us. Just recognize the value of what we do. And maybe down the road, we talked, because I called her and I said, hey, I said, I just wanted to tell you I got your email, thank you for telling me that. If there's
So you
anything, if
expressed gratitude in return. So you gave her
yeah,
compensation for her
yeah.
effort.
And we still don't know where they came up with their price. It's a sort of an oddball price. It's
Oh, she
it
told you the
ended.
price?
No, she told me the range. She got to thinking in ranges too. So she said 8 to 9,000. Well,
Okay. Well, that's
we're
fine. You
at
couldn't have got there.
yeah, we couldn't have got there. I mean, that's $4,000 to $5,000 difference from us. And so I think that
Okay.
what they did is they gave her an R410A scratch and dent unit and didn't tell her. And I told her so. I told her I think that that might be. And I said, just
What
remember those
refrigerant were you
shortcuts.
offering?
454.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
clearly, yes.
Yeah. So, as long as my whole goal, as long as you understand that if it goes bad and you call us, we can do something.
Right.
So, and that is what happened. It is a process. If you follow it, you may not get the sale, but you may not have to go out there and send a bid to begin with.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's golden, because, you know, um, all
Makes
we
life
want to know.
better.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is responsibly avoiding responsibility. They know, I know, we both agree and know. And that it's like a marriage, it's a good marriage because everybody's telling the truth.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, that
and you provided a tremendous amount of value. They expressed gratitude for that value. You
yeah,
differentiated yourself from all the other guys, uh,
yeah, yeah,
which is one of the things that Ronnie and Austin keep talking about. Also, is like, I had four other guys out here, and none of them explained any of this stuff to me. None of them looked at the equipment. None of them told me about mismatch in the ductwork. None of them offered to take static pressure, you know,
yeah. Nobody offered
and
to do
it,
anything. All they did is, you got a 3 ton? Okay. Because
right.
she had a 3 ton. And when I did the cool calc load, do you know what the cool calc load said? It didn't say 2 tons. It said 17,000 BTUs.
So you ran a full calc and it was even less than 2 ton.
Yeah, yeah. And
I wonder
so
what size they chose.
they didn't tell me that, but I bet you they picked a 3 ton. I'll bet you they did.
A
Just
3 ton single
because,
stage. How much ductwork do they have?
well, their duct work, the static on it was 0.72. The problem is that they have the right size duct work, but the wrong size grills. So the return grills in particular, because when I checked the duct static, on the return, it was like 0.49.
Oh,
And so,
yikes.
and so they got one of the grills is a 16, no, it's a 20 by 20, and it's got an 18-inch flex going to it. It's got a kink, and the other is a 10 by 20, and it's got a 12-inch piece of flex going to it that I know is also kinked. But the big thing is that grill, that dumb grill. When you turn it on, it's like, whoo. So I
Right.
mean,
We're gonna put no, you want noise to be one of the smiley faces in the second chart.
right, right. And I didn't put that on there, and I didn't think about that until you said something. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Noise.
yeah. Noise could have been another pain point, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's a fine line between helping them understand their pain and giving them the solutions to their pain.
right, right.
So some of the solutions need to come when they're ready to make a decision.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like I want a yes or no, and we'll go and really build the specification of this job.
Yeah, yeah. overall, I'll tell you, I was very pleased with the whole of it. Um, the whole of it that she's going to come in here and say, thank you for showing us. I don't know if they went with a 2.5 or a 3 ton or a 2 ton. If it is, I think based on the conversation that we talked, I think that they probably would have went with a 2.5 ton because, really I think I did a fairly good job of pushing them to telling them to let's head towards that green. Let's head towards that green.
So
Even if they
would
didn't
the
go to the
static
green,
pressure line on likely load range have helped them further bracket in to
I think,
their sizing constraints are?
yeah, I think so because what I'm doing up to this point is I'm using the manufacturer's expanded performance data. And a lot of times to me that might help a few people, but a better phrase, because I always end it with the phrase, this is the amount of air you're getting. No matter what the equipment you have, this is what you're getting.
Right.
And
Right.
so a
The
line,
capacity of your system is limited by the airflow, and this is where your airflow is. So you're not getting more than that, even if you have a bigger system. And the newer
yeah,
systems aren't going to put up with you attaching them to insufficient ductwork. So
yeah,
you're going to have a lot of well, higher electric expense because that ECM motor is going to be ramping up. You're going to have higher noise because of that ECM motor ramping up, um, and inability to have airflow. Um, and you're going to have higher ongoing maintenance
yeah,
because these ECM blowers are going to burn out
yeah. That's exactly right.
if
Exactly
they're
right.
not attached, if they're not installed to manufacturer specification.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it can be tricky because on that 3 ton, they had an 18-inch flex and a 12-inch flex, and that is more than ample. It's the grill size that crushed them. Um,
Right, right.
they even on the back end of the unit, the return box that goes to the end of it. It was I think it was 24 by 24. So even that couldn't help it. It really was sort of granular in that it was the size of the grill.
So, and if the equipment's broken, you're going to have to do a visual assessment of whether or not they have enough ductwork because you're not going to be able to
Right.
do static.
Right.
And like you can look at the ductwork and have a pretty good understanding, but are you going to catch all those other details to be able to say, okay, so this is your limiting factor here? Or, I mean, you can't do that, can you? You're just going to have
Not
to,
really.
no,
Not
you,
unless you not unless you've spent plenty of time designing duct and just
right.
know that a 10 by 20 is when you put in the factors and the filter, you're really on the thing, but the fact of the matter is that it really ends up being like 2 CFM per for 75, you know, square inches. You might get 150 BTUs out of it or CFM out of it. So it's just not going to do what you want for it to do, and you may be able to tell that if you designed it, but if you don't, no, you're not going to be able to tell that. So it just, you kind of have to keep it in a range because
Yeah.
if you don't,
Everything's ranges. Everything's in
yeah,
ranges. You don't, it's not like, oh, this is what your load is. It's like, you know, the more
yeah,
information you got, the narrower the range is going to be, but you're never predicting a point.
yeah, no, and if you are, you're not being wise.
Right. Right. You're really being naive.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that was my story, and I think it turned out great.
Oh, okay. I'm going to pause it here. I think this is good stopping point. Thank you, Reedy.
Yeah, yeah, good, 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 good.